Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 358 of the Unpopular podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And here at the Unpopular podcast, I'm not really asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. So for the people that have been following, I've been doing a divisional breakdown of every division in the NFL before the regular season starts. The first game of the regular season is in about a week and a half. And last episode, I finally ventured over to the AFC and I talked about the AFC South. This episode, I'm going to talk about probably the most interesting division in the NFL this year, and that is the AFC East. The AFC East, to me, the entirety of the AFC East has been a team or two dominating and everyone else just following in line. For the longest, it's been the New England Patriots and Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and then everyone else just falls in line. Usually is one really good team, and all the other teams are pretty much trash or mediocre at best. That's what the history of the AFC East has been. And until recently, there hasn't really been much common ground with all the teams. Well, this year, to me, is probably the most interesting year in the AFC East because almost every team has a case of why they could be the best team in the division or why they could win the division. And we haven't really seen that much at all, much if ever, in the AFC East. Let's start with the team that made the most noise, that had the biggest splash this offseason, and that, of course, is the New York Jets. To talk about the Jets now, of course, you have to talk about the history of the Jets. You have to talk about the fact of the Jets haven't really been good, hasn't really been relevant since Namath was wearing a jersey. Now, yes, I understand they had some Mark Sanchez years, and they went to the AFC Championship, I think, twice with Mark Sanchez. But outside of that, they've been starving not only for competent football, but they've been starving for relevancy. And I've talked about this on several occasions and several other podcasts, so you can go check it out. So I'm not going to go over the entire lineage of the Jets. But as we know, the biggest news, the biggest fish that was caught this offseason was Aaron Rodgers leaving the Green Bay Packers to go to the Jets. And this move has been seismic. When you see something fall in the water, it never just falls and nothing happens. It's always, it falls and then there's a ripple effect. Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets was the drop, was the item falling into the water. And now we're seeing the ripple effects. We're seeing the ripple effects with not just the AFC East, but with, quarterbacks and teams ready to go for it now. And that is the theme of the AFC East, going for it now. Now, yes, there are some teams, and of course we'll talk about them when we get to them, that have time and have the ability to develop a little bit, hoping that in the future you'll have more of a shot. And don't get me wrong, every AFC East team, except for maybe one, but we'll talk about that, to me has a shot to win the AFC. But let me talk about this Jets team. This Jets team is drastically different than it was a year ago. But that's only because of the quarterback position. But as we know, and as we've said, and as we see in the NFL, you're really nothing without a competent quarterback. If your quarterback is not competent, if your quarterback is not top of the upper echelon, you don't really have a shot in this league, unless you just have a situation like the 49ers, which we talk about the 49ers a lot because the 49ers are such an outlier in the NFL. And what I mean by outlier is the 49ers' best player is not the quarterback. In fact, their best 5 players is not the quarterback position. Yet and still, year after year, they are always in the mix, in the running to play for a Super Bowl or to be in contention to be in a Super Bowl. So I say it's so much of an outlier because when you look at most of the Super Bowl winners, or you look at most of the teams that are viable for a Super Bowl or that are competing in a Super Bowl, they have a top-tier quarterback outside of the 49ers. Let's get back to the Jets. Last year, this Jets team had one major flaw, and that was their quarterback position. Having Zach Wilson and having Mike White, it just held this team back. Especially when you had a team that had Quentin Williams and that had Breece Hall before he got hurt. And to me, Breece Hall was the leading candidate for the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Now, it ultimately went to his teammate Garrett Wilson, who was on the wide receiver position, but they had those two dominant players. They had Sauce Gardner, who won the Defensive Rookie of the Year on this team. This team was littered and is littered with talent. And let me not say littered, because me, that kind of sounds like there isn't much around. This team is oozing with talent. And last year, it was oozing with talent, but they couldn't get the quarterback position right. And you hear this a lot. Especially when we've talked about the Chargers for a while and the Colts. We talked about the Colts last episode. When we talked about the Colts in the past, one thing that we've said, especially probably since Andrew Luck retired, the sentiment around the Colts have been they are a quarterback away. And if they get that quarterback, they will be in prime position. They've had really good teams throughout the years. They just have not had the quarterback position. I mean, they had Phillip Rivers, who was at the end of his career, a Matt Ryan, a Carson Wentz. It was always, if they had a quarterback, they could be viable or make some noise in the playoffs. Last year, the Jets were in the same boat. They had so many good pieces. It's just you can see the thing that was holding them back was the quarterback position. And now you bring in Aaron Rodgers. And you bring in Aaron Rodgers with a team that has Elijah Vera Tucker, that has C.J. Uzman, that has, like I said, Garrett Wilson, who won the Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, who has Breece Hall. Now they added Dalvin Cook. Splash after splash after splash after splash. There isn't a position on this team that is lacking. Let me backtrack. Let me backtrack. There's only one position or one unit, let me say, that is lacking on this team, and that is the offensive line. Outside of Elijah Vera Tucker, they don't have much of a offensive line you can feel confident in that can take you far in the playoffs, or that can take you far and make a deep run. They haven't had that for a while. Now, you can't overcome bad coaching. That's just, it's almost impossible to overcome bad coaching because there's so many, coaching units. There's the head coach, there's the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special team. You cannot overcome bad coaching. It doesn't matter how good you are. That's one thing that makes the NFL different from the NBA. You can overcome bad coaching in the NBA if you just have a star player. And the star player, and if you have a great team, just a bad coach, you're able to circumvent the inequities of a bad coach because you have a star player. That's not the case in football. But what you can do is you can hide deficiencies in your team. And The biggest deficiency for this Jets team is their offensive line. The way to overcome a bad offensive line is to have a mobile quarterback, a quarterback that is able to get the ball out quickly. So you have, quick slants, quick plays that can just get the ball out of his hands, and have an elusive running back. Well, the problem with the Jets is Aaron Rodgers is not most of that. Let me say this. Aaron Rodgers will go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play. One of the most talented quarterbacks to ever put on pads. I understand that when people look at Aaron Rodgers in his career and you see the lack of winning, while yes, he did win one Super Bowl, he's only been to one Super Bowl. And a person that talented and a person that good, a player that good, you wonder why he's only been to one. And he has 4 MVPs. So I understand those questions are there, and those questions are valid. Those concerns are valid. But there is no debate that Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest talents the quarterback position has ever seen. There also really shouldn't be a debate about how Aaron Rodgers is now and what Aaron Rodgers is now. Aaron Rodgers is not the most mobile quarterback. He's 40. He's not the most mobile quarterback. He's not the most elusive quarterback. And even at his height, he wasn't the most mobile or elusive. What he is his accuracy, his ball placement, the way that he's able to get the ball in his hands as quickly as he is, and how effortlessly he's able to get the ball in his hands is almost second to none. But elusive? Nah. And you get Breece Hall is a little more elusive than Dalvin Cook, but to me, both of them are kind of the same type of back. They're both, while yes, they can be elusive at times. They're both mostly a north and south back. They use their power, they use their force. Breece Hall more than Dalvin Cook, but use their force to get to where they need to go. And with the offensive line having the issues or the concerns that it has, that to me is the glaring weakness of this team. With a team that has C.J. Mosley, a team that has the pieces that they have, I think that with the offensive line being how it is, that to me can definitely hold them back. Let me say this. There's a lot of expectation for the quarterback position. Or not just the quarterback. There's a lot of expectations for this Jets team. Some people have the Jets making it as far as the Super Bowl. Some people have the Jets winning the Super Bowl. Because, like I said, going into this season and seeing the success that this team has had last year, you think that with a major, not just a little, you have a major upgrade at the quarterback position. You think that is the thing that, especially when you see the team that was last year, you think that bringing in Aaron Rodgers is the thing that puts this team over the top. A team that was this close of making it to a playoffs last year. I'll say this. I think that we should, and I said this in past episodes, but I think that we really need to, or Jets fans, because I don't think everyone thinks this way, but Jets fans need to dampen their expectations about this season. And most of that is because there's a lot of there's more question marks that are being overlooked, let's say, because of name. Because you hear Aaron Rodgers, because you hear Sauce Gardner, because you hear Quentin Williams, because you hear Delvin Cook, because you hear Garrett Wilson, because you hear Breece Hall, because you hear C.J. Mosley, because you hear Elijah Vera Tucker, because you hear, Alan Lazard, because you hear some of these names, you just automatically think, oh, that's talent after talent after talent after talent after talent, which it is. But as we've seen on several occasions, it does sometimes just compiling a group of talent doesn't ultimately mean that you're a Super Bowl caliber team. There's a lot. I know a lot of people are trying to compare this Jets team to the LA Rams team that won the Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford and Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp and Von Miller. And while, yes, I do see similarities in terms of you compile this team for right now. Aaron Rodgers isn't getting any younger. Dalvin Cook, you just got him off free agency. A lot of these players, there are some, not a lot, but there are some players that are young, that are older than and like like Randall Cobb, there are players that are older than the rest. And I don't expect 4, 5, 6 years of Aaron Rodgers. I don't expect 4, 5, 6 years of C.J. Mosley. I don't expect, and if they do play, because C.J. Mosley's been in the league for 9 years, if they do play for 4, 5, 6 years, I don't expect them to be at the apex, And this team, kind of like the Colts that I talked about last year. You have the young part of this team, the Garrett Wilsons, the Breece Halls, the Sauce Gardners, the Quentin Williams. Then you have the older side of the team, like I said, Aaron Rodgers and Randall Cobb and C.J. Mosley and C.J. Uzman. There's a question mark as to how this team is going to blend, and one of the biggest differences that this Jets team has one of the biggest differences between this Jets team and the Rams team is when you look at the Rams competition, the AFC or NFC, they didn't really have much competition outside of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady. They had Aaron Rodgers in the Green Bay Packers, and they had the 49ers. They didn't have much competition, or let me say this: the competition that the Rams had does not or pales in comparison to the competition that the Jets are going through. Like I said, you have the Chiefs, you have the Bengals, you have the Bills in your own division, you have pretty much your whole division. So that's a question mark. Another question mark is, of course, what Aaron Rodgers are we getting? We can get the Aaron Rodgers, because right now when we talk about Aaron Rodgers, we talk about Aaron Rodgers, the name and the history of the Aaron Rodgers. And a lot of people completely forget about last year. And last year, Aaron Rodgers was not good. You can attest it to the injuries around him, but Aaron Rodgers wasn't that good. And the Green Bay Packers didn't even make the playoffs. So was that year more of an outlier year, seeing as though the year before he did win the MVP, or was that or was that what we should expect? What I'm saying is this. Oh, another question mark is, of course, and I've been talking about it, is the offensive line. Can the offensive line hold long enough to allow this team to flourish offensively? There's a reason why majority of last week they were campaigning to get David Bakhtiari, who is considered a very good offensive lineman, David Bakhtiari to come to the Jets, or trying to make a deal happen to get David Bakhtiari to come to this team. They need offensive line depth. Outside of Elijah Vera Tucker, who is a very good guard, they don't have much. And, of course, the coaching staff is a question mark. I don't think that anybody questions if Robert Saleh is a good coach. I don't think that anybody questions if Nathaniel Hackett is a good coordinator. I think that we've all proven, or I think that he's proven without a shadow of a doubt, that he is a better coordinator than he is a head coach. I think the question is, and if Robert Saleh wins, he would probably be the first coach since Bill Belichick to be a defensive-oriented or defensive-minded head coach to win a Super Bowl. Because when you look at the past Super Bowl, you have Sean McVay, you have Andy Reid, you have Doug McDermott. Like, those are offensive-minded coaches. So I think that, to me, the ceiling for this team is, of course, a Super Bowl. That is the ceiling when you couple the new acquisitions that come in and the success of last year. I think that the ceiling is, of course, a Super Bowl. I would say this, to me, they're closer to, how do I say? Let me give you a realistic expectation for this team. I think that this team is good enough to win the division. I think that this team is good enough to make some noise the first round, maybe second round, maybe make it all the way to the AFC Championship. But I don't think when you pair them up against some other teams in the AFC, I don't know, especially when we talk about the quarterback play in. If they do make it to the AFC, what changes, if any, has their offensive line gone through? I don't. It's hard for me to see. It's hard for me to see this team making it to a Super Bowl when we compare the Aaron Rodgers that we see now compared to other quarterbacks. Not to mention, they have a tough regular season. You have the Bills, the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Eagles, the Chargers, the Dolphins. Like, all those are the Browns. All those have competent quarterbacks, above average quarterbacks, outside of maybe Dak Prescott. So I do think that this team, the Jets, are good enough to win the division. I do think that they will win the division, I believe. Let me say this. The last thing I'll say about this team. The ceiling with this team is, of course, the Super Bowl. The floor of this team is not even making the playoffs. And when you look at that record, when you look at that schedule, I think that the reality of this Jets, it's closer to the floor than it is the ceiling. I think that they'll be good. But there are a bunch of question marks that I have that a lot of people are overlooking because they have Aaron Rodgers and because they finally have a competent quarterback that with a team that is good. So I think that this is going to be the loudest team. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think that this is going to be the most interesting team this year because of the expectations that a lot of people, and probably the expectations they're putting on themselves. But I am very interested to see just how this Jets team looks. Speaking of expectations, and speaking of floor versus ceiling, let's move on to the Bills. And kind of like we talked about with when we talk about windows, Super Bowl windows, a lot of times that people forget that windows close. And while, yes, there are some teams and some players that have a championship window longer than others, eventually windows close. And we've seen it. Hell, we saw Tom Brady's Super Bowl window closed. And while, yes, it was later than most people's careers, it does close. And I'm not saying it's closed, but I am starting to question if the Buffalo Bills Super Bowl window has closed. Now, I'm not saying that this Buffalo Bills team is bad. This team looks very similar to the team that they had last year and the team that they had the year before that made it to, had one of the greatest playoff games in recent memory against the Chiefs. But there comes a certain point where expectations have to change and expectations have to damper for some players or some teams. Every year, for probably since Josh Allen's second or third year, we've been saying that this team, the Bills, is a Super Bowl caliber team. And every single year, something happens to just dash our expectations, and they ultimately don't live up to it. Is this team good? Yes. You have, of course, Josh Allen. You have Stephon Diggs, who I consider one of the better or one of the best wide receivers in the league. You have a young running back in James Cook, who is the brother of Dalvin Cook. You have Kincaid that you got from the draft. You have Dawson Knox. You have Gabe Davis. You also have Tre'Davious White. This team is good. Shaq Lawson. But I don't know how many times, Ed Oliver, I don't know how many times we can go into a season and saying that this team is a Super Bowl caliber team and not even make it to a conference championship. At the end of the day, these players are getting older. This is Josh Allen's second year removed from Brian Daboll. And he didn't look good his first year. Led the league in interceptions. I'm looking at this team, right? And you have Leonard Floyd. You have pieces, man. Jordan Phillips. I just don't. I'll say this, man. This team also had a very loud offseason. When you talk about the seemingly bad relationship between Stephon Diggs and Sean McDermott. And just that whole situation. And on top of that, there also comes noise when you continuously don't meet expectations. And don't get me wrong, man. Everyone around them, outside of maybe one team, is getting better. I just don't know how long that this window is going to be open. I know that Joe Burrow said that the Cincinnati Bengals window is open his entire career. And trust me, man, I love the confidence. I do. And a lot of people can say the same thing for Josh Allen. But this team has arguably the best safety duo in Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. This team has pieces, man. My thing is, how long are these pieces going to be, you know, how long are these pieces going to be cornerstone type pieces? And like Von Miller is not getting any younger. I'm just, I don't know, man. I'm just, on top of that, like I said, the Jets are now have gotten better. We'll talk about the Dolphins in a second, and we'll talk about the Patriots. But both of those teams, you can argue, have gotten better. Do I think that Josh Allen is still one of the better quarterbacks in the league? Of course. And, of course, we'll have to see if last year and his interception rate was more of an outlier season, or is it back to the Josh Allen that we know? Because remember, Josh Allen, the first year or two, was a turnover machine. But there is a trend. No. There's a precedent that's been set. That usually if you have a loud offseason, if your offseason is filled with turmoil, if your offseason is filled with just a bunch of things that don't produce positivity to your team, usually those teams don't win. And while, yes, you can really only attribute what went on with Stephon Diggs and Sean McDermott as like one isolated thing, it permeates throughout the whole. I think that Stephon Diggs' frustration is not just. I'm not just going to single out Stephon Diggs. I think that his frustration is a bigger point, that there's more players frustrated. It's just because he has the label of a diva wide receiver, which I don't. I just think maybe the way that he goes about things, I would do differently. But I understand that Stephon Diggs is considered one of the best wide receivers in the league, and he wants to win. So I understand, the frustration. I think that the frustration he has is duplicated throughout the majority of the team. But of course, Stephon Diggs is going because, again, this team, year after year, this team is considered one of the best teams in football. And year after year, this team is considered one of those teams that should be in contention for a Super Bowl. And all those expectations breed nothing but disappointment. And don't get me wrong, man. These players expect the same thing. I told you, players go into seasons different. Well, most of players go into the season the same way. And by week 2, 3, maybe even 4, your expectations usually change. We've heard that. We've heard that from multiple players. Multiple players on championship caliber teams and players not on championship caliber teams. You can tell by week 4 or 5 what type of team you're going to have. Is your team a Super Bowl caliber team? Is it a wild card caliber team? Is it a high lottery pick team? Or not lottery, a high draft pick team. You can tell very early. And for years now, this Bills team has been a Super Bowl caliber team. They just haven't gotten there. And I know the frustration also has to come from the fact that Sean McDermott in multiple situations has come up small, whether that's his lack of play design, especially when we talk about the run game, or the lack of focus on the run game outside of Josh Allen. Devin Singletary has been their number one running back for the longest. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to disrespect Devin Singletary, but when we talk about some of the better running backs in the league, Devin Singletary's name does not come up. Now, it could be different with James Cook, but you never know. You have to scheme up plays and running plays. I don't know how many times we look up and Josh Allen has thrown 50 or 60 times in a game, and ran 20 to 30 times. Don't get me wrong. I understand that Josh Allen is an incredible runner of the football, and when we talk about his speed and size, he's one of the better mobile quarterbacks in the league. But it gets to a point where it's just like it's predictable. And when you have a predictable offense, it doesn't matter who is at the helm of who is at the quarterback position, who's at the wide receiver position. If you know what the Bills are going to do, it's easy to scheme against. And the complaint that we've heard a lot from Sean McDermott is he does not make adjustments. So I think that the Jets and the Bills are clearly the two, I'm not going to say clearly, but because of their quarterback positions, should be the best two teams in this division. And I have to question how many years or how many seasons are we going to look up and say that this Bills team is a Super Bowl caliber team? And then when we get to the end of the year, those expectations fall very short. And don't get me wrong, man, there wasn't many changes made by the Bills this offseason. When you see how many changes that the Jets have went through, or how many changes the Dolphins went through, there hasn't been many changes with this Bills team. So what you're essentially saying is you're going to try to run it back. But that's always been my thing. It's like this team lost to the Cincinnati Bengals at home last year, I think in the first or second round. What are you running back? I'm not trying to be hard on the Bills, but I'm just being honest. I don't know how many times you can say this is a Super Bowl caliber team and they don't make the Super Bowl, or they don't even make it close to the Super Bowl. Again, the greatest game that we saw Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen play, that was not the conference championship. Or was it? No, it wasn't. Because Patrick Mahomes then went on to lose to Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals went to the Super Bowl. So you can have all these great players or all these good players. Tre'Davious White is one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Like I said, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are arguably the two best or the best safety tandem in the league. Von Miller he's one of the better, or he's one of the best linebackers in the league. Josh Allen, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Stephon Diggs, one of the best running back or wide receivers in the league. Ed Oliver, one of the best defensive players in the league. However, none of that has birthed anything outside of failed expectations. So we'll see, man. Because don't get me wrong, this team is definitely a Super Bowl caliber team. But like I just said, we say that almost yearly at this point. So to me, the Dolphins is a very interesting story. And actually, it's a very quick story. To me, the Dolphins is a clear-cut Super Bowl caliber roster. And the success of this team is solely based on Tua Tagovailoa. And I'm not saying it as far as talent-wise. I'm saying as far as health. We talked about Brock Purdy and the 49ers. And for years, we've said that the 49ers' success is predicated the as good as the team is, it can get you to a certain point, but it can't get you over that hump because of the quarterback play. And the Dolphins are looking eerily similar to those 49ers teams. Now, whoa. I'm not talking about defensively. What I'm saying is the Dolphins, you can argue, has one of the best rosters in football. Treon Armstead. You have Jalen Ramsey, who did hurt himself, and he's going to be on IR till halfway through the season. Robbie Chosen, formerly known as Robbie Anderson. Bradley Chubb. This team is one of the better teams in football. Dan Freeney, Myles Gaskin, Isaiah Higgins. Oh, he's a rookie, but Isaiah Higgins, tight end. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Xavier Howard. Xavier Howard. This team is good, man. And Raheem Morset. Or Raheem. I'm sorry, bro. I apologize. I definitely messed your name up. Raheem Mostert. Again, you can argue that this team is one of the best teams in football. But one thing that's inarguable is what we saw last year. And what we saw last year is a player in Tua Tagovailoa that got concussed 2 to 3 times in a month. Mind you, there are some types of concussions that if you get concussed, you're out for the year. We saw that the Jordan Reed, who was forced to retire because he just kept getting hurt and he kept getting concussions. Jordan Reed was considered one of the better, if not, one of the best tight ends in football when healthy. But because he continuously got concussions, he was out of there. He was forced to retire early. So there are concussions that are so bad and so severe that you're out for the season. Now, I'm not saying, obviously, that Tua Tagovailoa didn't suffer those type of concussions, but what I'm saying is we should never see someone get concussed 2 to 3 times in 1 month to the point where you lose control of your body movements. Where you're falling, you can't get up, or you're woozy, or you're falling after you get up, or like I said, you have no control over your motor functions in your hands or your body. To the point where even in this podcast, I was saying, maybe Tua needs to reevaluate his career. Because at the end of the day, sports in general is just a game. I understand that it makes a lot of money. Playing basketball, playing football, playing any professional sport makes a lot of money. And I understand that a lot of people have families to feed. I get that. But Tua has made a good amount of money in his career already. and there gets to a point where you suffer 3 concussions. Now, don't get me, and this is also coupled with Tua has been, for lack of a better term, injury prone since college. So it gets to a point where you have to really consider your life, and is this something that is sustainable? But Tua is in good spirits. It looks like he's going to start week 1. Obviously, he's healthy. And the question is, I don't have much questions about this team. When I mean this team, I mean the Dolphins. The biggest and really only question that I have is with Jalen Ramsey. With Tua Tagovailoa and his health. I think that we've seen flashes of Tua look like the Tua that was drafted mighty high in the draft. We can all go back to the game where they were down 21 points in the going to the fourth quarter against the Ravens, and they ultimately won. And I think Tua has shed the whole the biggest indictment to Tua when healthy is, of course, he can't throw the deep ball. But we saw a majority of last year that is obviously not true. I think this team is one of the better teams in football. And I think this team can shock a lot of people because nobody's really, especially when we talk about the AFC East and all the moves that the Jets made and, of course, the Bills, nobody's really talking about how good this Dolphins team can be. But, of course, it's really only predicated on how good or how healthy Tua can be. So I think that, and also it's health as well, because and also I do want to see how they fare without Jalen Ramsey. That was another and one of the bigger acquisitions this offseason. Of course, the Dolphins getting Jalen Ramsey from the Rams. Now, of course, Jalen Ramsey, it looks like he's going to be out until at the earliest December. And what this team looks like at that point. But I have no question that this is one of the better rosters in football and one of the best rosters in football. The question only comes as how will Tua look? And will injuries ultimately prevent this team from making noise, not only in the AFC, but the AFC East? Or not only in the AFC East, but the AFC in general? Because the ceiling, we talked about it, ceiling and floors. To me, the ceiling for this team is the Super Bowl. I think with the roster, with the defense, with the connection that Tua Tagovailoa and his wide receivers, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, have, the ceiling is definitely Super Bowl. But we also know that I think the floor is Tua not finishing the season due to injury again. So we'll see. I'm starting to compare the how do I say? Last episode I talked about the Titans. And I talked about how the script or the outline for the Titans hasn't changed for the last few years. And how it's almost insane. It's almost insanity to expect something different from the Titans seeing as though nothing has really changed by the Titans. So expecting things differently, but doing the same outcome, or doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome. I'm starting to feel that way for the New England Patriots. I understand that last year, a lot of people can want to throw out last year because they were riddled with or they had a couple major injuries, and on top of that, they did not have an offensive coordinator. And like I said before, it's almost impossible in the NFL to overcome bad coaching, because coaching just matters, or coaching is just that much or that important for every skills position, especially the offensive coordinator. And when you went into the season, especially with Bill Belichick being a defensive minded coach, you go into the season you think that you're good enough to run the play, or you call the plays because you're just the great Bill Belichick. No. And on top of that, you had Bill O'Brien, who for some reason was the offensive coordinator. He has a defensive minded. He's not a defensive coach. So, or not offensive coach. Let me say that. So I can see how last year was a big situation, or a lose-lose situation that they pretty much put themselves in, because it's like you have a young quarterback and you don't have an offensive coordinator, and your coach is a defensive-minded coach. I don't see how you expect to win in that situation. But this is a new year. But trust me, man, I don't have much. Again, it goes back to what we talked about with the Titans. What's different about this team that hasn't been talked about, that hasn't been discussed, or that hasn't been read, that hasn't been outside of them having an offensive coordinator now? What is different about this team? And what is usually said about this team? Their defense is really good. Well, this year they have a very good defense. Obviously, Bill Belichick is one of the best coaches in football. Bill Belichick will always be one of the best coaches in football, especially when we talk about defense. But outside of that, there's not much to. I know they just got Ezekiel Elliott, and I don't think that Ezekiel Elliott. I'm looking at Ezekiel Elliott in the lens of the last time I saw him, he didn't look the greatest. And it's like, could that just be a change of scenery? Maybe. I don't know. But he didn't look that good, and there's a reason why he's not on the Cowboys anymore. But he could be, if he is the Ezekiel Elliott of old, which I don't think he is, but if he is, that could definitely be something. He can be considered one of the best running backs in the division, between him and Dalvin Cook, maybe, or Breece Hall, maybe. But I look at this team, man. Kendrick Bourne, he was a good wide receiver, but we'll talk about it. Trent Brown, offensive lineman. Trey Flowers. Nick Folks on this team? Oh, shoot. Mike Gesicki is a pretty good tight end that played for the Dolphins for a while. Kevin Harris looked really good. His name's just starting to get skinnier. Matthew Judon, who was in consideration for Defensive Player of the Year last year. Jalen Mills, who's a really good defensive back. Devontae Parker. He's a pretty good. He's a pretty good wide receiver. Not the best, obviously. He's kind of bounced around, but he's pretty good. Jabril Peppers. A lot of people are saying that he's in the best position, playing a defensive player, playing Matthew Slater, who's a pretty good wide receiver. They have Juju Smith-Schuster now. Yeah, man. I'm looking at this team, bro. To me, I have to talk about the I'm not gonna say elephant in the room. But I'm gonna have a very honest conversation with you guys about Mac Jones. I understand that when you look at Mac Jones, he has the same build, he has the same body type as a typical quarterback. And don't get me wrong, Mac Jones looked incredible at Alabama. One of Alabama's greatest coach or quarterbacks the school has ever seen. And I understand like I said, fit matters and where you go matters. And I do think that it was a disservice to Mac Jones last year playing a whole season without an offensive coordinator or a competent offensive person calling plays for you. And so this is year 3 of Mac Jones, and I think that he is by far the worst quarterback in this division. And I think that this team is by far, when you look at roster, by far the worst team in this division. I would be extremely shocked if this team makes any noise in the playoffs. If this team even makes the playoffs. Again, what I believe is a lot of people are going off of name. You're going off of Bill Belichick. You're going off of New England Patriots, and we know the recent history that the Patriots have with Tom Brady in Bill Belichick. But this ain't Tom Brady, and this ain't those Patriots. I don't think the Patriots are that good, to be honest with you. There's no way in heaven or hell that I'm going to say that. It was bad when there was legit quarterback battle between Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. I don't expect much from this team at all. I don't. I think when we talk about units, I think they have one of the worst, outside of maybe offensive line, they have one of the worst units at every position. The quarterback position, probably worse in the division. Running back, probably worse. Actually, definitely worse in the division. The only thing that I think they have probably best in the division is coaching. Is Bill Belichick by name. Because the last few years, Bill Belichick hasn't looked that good, to be honest with you. So I don't expect much success from this team, to be completely honest. And when you look, if we're ranking the teams from the division, I think it's the Jets, Bills, are solely because of quarterback, the Dolphins, and a wide margin. Then you get to the Patriots. I honestly think the Patriots be one of the worst teams in football this year. I think. I don't have that much faith in Mac Jones. That's just. I don't think Mac Jones is the guy to get it done. And on top of all that, you don't have much to work with around you. So we'll see. Like I said, last episode I talked about the AFC South. And of course, as we know, in the AFC South, you have the Indianapolis Colts. And I talked about Anthony Richardson in the season, and the ceiling that the Colts have is pretty much predicated on Anthony Edwards. And the Colts have also been in the news recently for the back and forth between Jim Irsay, who was the owner, and your star player, and Jonathan Taylor. And we also know that the running back positions and a lot of the top tier running backs have been fighting for better pay for the position. This entire that fight has been going on for years now, but it's starting to it's been revving up a lot more this offseason. And even to the point where Jim Irsay has said some very head-scratching things and very eye-opening things about the way owners value that position. And that, is, of course, is the running back position. Those comments pretty much sent Jonathan Taylor into a feeling of, I don't want to play here anymore. I want to be traded. Well, the recent news, of course, is Jim Irsay and the Colts have allowed Jonathan Taylor to seek a trade. Let me first start this by saying that all of this could have been prevented. If Jim Irsay just didn't talk, this could have been prevented. You didn't hear any rumblings of dysfunction or any rumblings of frustration between Jonathan Taylor and Jim Irsay. We haven't heard that until this offseason. And there's no question that Jonathan Taylor is considered one of the best running backs in football, if not the best running back. I mean, just 2 or 3 years ago, he was in contention for MVP. But I think that this is a very important moment for Jonathan Taylor and the running back position as a whole. I think that this is the time. This is the first step that they can do, that the running back position can do to get the pay that, or get close to the pay that they're looking for. I thought Saquon Barkley was going to be one of them, but when looking at the deal he got, not at all. And it even looks like Josh Jacobs is going to end his holdout. Now, do I think that it's going to happen? Do I think that the running backs are going to get the money that they think they deserve? No. Because Jim Irsay spoke for a lot of owners and how they really view and feel about running backs. But I will say this. This is a big moment for running backs. Jonathan Taylor has the opportunity to set the market and go out and get the deal that he wants. Now, again, I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's just the opportunity that's presented in front of him. And it always starts with one. We talk about markets. You talk about the quarterback market, running back market, wide receiver market. The market is usually set by the last person. And Jonathan Taylor has the opportunity to go out and find a team that can reset the market for the right running back. And that's what they've drastically been wanting. Now, again, I do think that the owners kind of work together when we talk about the NFL. And I don't think that it's really going to happen. I do think that Jonathan Taylor is going to be traded. I just don't think that you're going to be traded for the compensation that he thinks he deserves or gets the deal. Because this situation is a very fascinating situation. And I say it's a fascinating situation because Jonathan Taylor's next team isn't just trade, like you're trading for him, and Jonathan Taylor's expecting to be traded and to get a new contract. So it's definitely interesting. I'm interested to see how this is going to play out, but to me, when you look at it through the Indianapolis Colts side, it's just unfortunate because none of this had to happen. None of this had to happen. And now when you look, I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be out of there. I also think it was very strategic that the Indianapolis Colts finally allowed him to seek a trade request, a week and a half, 2 weeks before the season starts. And especially for a running back, that's very difficult to do. Because most rosters, actually all rosters are pretty much set. Now, I know that you make exceptions for star players, like if Jonathan Taylor is considered a star player. So if your team wants him, you go and you feel like you're a running back away from winning a Super Bowl, i.e. what Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers did, that you're going to make the move. And I think that that's going to be kind of the similar deal that you're going to see. You're going to see a team trade for him, and then very quickly you see them get a deal done with that play, like a long-term deal. I think that's what Jonathan Taylor is looking for. But this is just unfortunate, man. It's just unfortunate for the Colts. And I'm very interested to see how this ends up or how this turns out for Jonathan Taylor. So, who is considered one of the best running backs in the league. Let's move forward. I do want to say congratulations to Sha'Carri Richardson and Noah Lyles for winning gold in the World Championship for the 100 meters. I don't remember the last time both a male and a woman from the United States won gold the same year in the same event. And it's been very documented what Sha'Carri Richardson has gone through when we talk about, her mother, when we talk about the last time qualifying with the whole weed situation. She's been criticized a lot, and I think that people don't understand. I don't understand because I'm not a professional athlete, but I think that a lot of people don't understand that, or it's very hard for a lot of people to separate the athlete from the person, and people don't understand that not all athletes are able to be picture perfect all the time. And some athletes cope different ways. And I'm not speaking on Sha'Carri Richardson because I don't know her. I just know her from what she does, which is run pretty fast. And I know that, last time we saw her on this stage, I think she finished damn near last. So to finish damn near last, to then come back and have pretty much the fastest time in the world now, because when you win the 100 meter, you pretty much have the current fastest time. And she ran that jump in 10.65 seconds over Sharika Jackson and Shirley Ann Fraser Price, who are both widely considered arguably the fastest people in the world, Jamaicans. This is Sha'Carri Richardson's moment. I know that, again, news outlets, they have a problem separating the person from the athlete. And I think that, which I guess is media outlets' job, but I feel like sometimes you're overcritical with people and they throw people away too fast. Meaning, she finished damn near the last time in this competition. Nah, and not to mention she's very outspoken. She's young. She's very bold in her stances. she's very confident in her abilities and her skills. So we don't like that. We like, or people 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 mistake confidence for cocky, and people think that humble means you have to be quiet. And I do think that there are things that Sha'Carri Richardson probably didn't need to say, but she said it is what it is. That's her opinion. But I'm not taking away from her moment. This is her moment. This is Noah Lyles' moment. Congratulations to both of them for winning the 100 meter. Again, I don't remember the last time two Americans won that competition, both men and women's. So shouts out to Noah Lyles and shouts out to Sha'Carri Richardson. It's definitely her moment, and she deserves all the praise and all the accolades. I do appreciate how she kind of, for lack of a better term, kept receipts. And she, when you've been chastised and criticized as much as she has been, I do appreciate that now that she's won, she's not forgetting. Like, I remember what y'all said, bro. And shouts out to her. Again, shouts out to her. So, also want to say shouts out to Sean O'Malley. Oh, my gosh. Sean O'Malley beat Aljamain Sterling by TKO KO in the second round in UFC 292. I know Aljamain Sterling, I think he was one of the longest title defense holders in UFC history. And I know Sean O'Malley, you see, a lot of people are kind of comparing him to Conor McGregor, not in the sense of how Conor McGregor is now, but in the sense of the confidence and how he carries himself and the flamboyantness. And just Sean O'Malley is a very good fighter. And what I will say is, I think that the UFC has found their next promotable star. With the colored hair and the tattoos and how he's able to. I think that he's one of the best fighters in UFC, at least the bantamweight division, seeing though he's the bantamweight title holder. Yes. And I think that with his personality and with being able to promote him, I think that he's primed to be in a lot of big fights. Shouts out to Aljamain Sterling. Again, it was a good fight until it wasn't, and he got knocked out second round. And Sean O'Malley showed the world how good he can be on that stage. Like I said, now he is the UFC bantamweight title holder. Shouts out to him, man. Also, again, this is the shout out portion of the show. I want to shout out Coco Gauff and Novak Djokovic for winning the Western and Southern Open. Coco Jones, I think she beat her first number one ranked player in the world. She beat them, and then she went on to, of course, win the Open. And she won over Carolina Muchova. I'm sure I messed your name up. I completely apologize. And she beat Iga Swiatek, who was the number one player. I know I messed your name up as well. I apologize. But shouts out to Coco Gauff. I think it's what I enjoy the most about seeing this Coco Gauff rise is we're seeing the highs and lows of it. And I'm not going to say that she's going to be as dominant as a Serena Williams or a Venus Williams. I think they came on the scene and just dominated from like day one. Now, of course, we know the story and the rise of it and everything. So I'm not going to compare Coco Gauff to Serena or Venus. But what I will say is I enjoy seeing the ups and downs of her career. And I enjoy seeing where she came from to where she is. She's very, I think she's like 19 or 20, maybe 20, 19. And it's I love to see the maturation. I love to see how she is growing in her sport and how she is becoming one of the best players in tennis. And to do this at 19, to be the number one overall or number one player in the world at 19 is incredible. I know that sometimes we get, and it goes back to Sha'Carri Richardson. I know that we're kind of overly critical of people, of athletes, and I know that when Coco Gauff, when she gets close to winning an Open and she ultimately loses, people are like, oh, she's trash, or this is all she can get to. Not really taking into consideration she's 19. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see her career, and I'm excited to see just how good it turns out, and how. And I'm excited to see just the maturation and just the maturity and the growth of her tennis game. And again, man, shouts out to her for winning the Western and Southern Open. And like I said, shouts out to Novak Djokovic, man. Last time we saw him, he lost to Carlos Alcaraz, who is the number one overall player. He's also very young, and that was considered one of the better matches that we've ever seen. And while no, it wasn't better than that one, this match against Carlos Alcazar was incredible. I think it lasted like 3 hours and 48 minutes. It was great, and I don't know. I'm excited to see, again, man. We're in a different age of tennis. I'm excited to see this potential rival that we could see from Carlos and Novak Djokovic. Carlos, I think he's like 20 or 19 or 20 as well, and being the number one overall player is crazy to me. How old is this guy? He is 20. Being the number one player at 20 is crazy, and pushing someone like Novak Djokovic to the brink and ultimately beating them the match or the matchup before, or the matchup before is crazy. And Novak Djokovic, even though people may not like his personality, he is considered one of the best tennis players to ever play. And it didn't disappoint, again, he beat Carlos Alcazar to win the Western and Southern Open, and it was one of the best matches that you could watch. So shouts out to Coco Gauff and shouts out to Novak Djokovic. Also want to say shouts out to Lionel Messi and Inter Miami for winning the League Cup. That's if you ever question how good Lionel Messi is, look at this season, or look at the 7 games that he's played. Last year, Inter Miami was the worst team in MLS football, or MLS. This year, they win the League Cup, and Lionel Messi has only been there for 7 games, and has like 10 goals. We knew that there is it's no secret, no question that there is a talent gap between the Euros and MLS. And MLS is the far superior or far inferior league when we talk about compared to the Euros. And we also knew that Lionel Messi is leaps and bounds the best player in MLS right now. And you can argue, I don't think it's an argument at this point, but you can argue that he is the greatest football player ever. And like I said, that shouldn't be argued. He comes in there 7 games, right? He helps Inter Miami win the League Cup. He also wins the best player and has the most goals, and now he has 44 individual trophies, When we talk about the span of his career, he has 44, which is the most in football history. Again, I understand that people want to kind of discredit what's going on with Lionel Messi because of how good he is and because of the inferior competition in the MLS. But at the end of the day, I talked about this before. He's at the point of his career where he's having fun. He just does what he wants to do, and he's gone through who he needs to go through. He's been at the mountaintop at every single place he's been. And shouts out to Lionel Messi. Shouts out to Inter Miami for winning the League Cup. Also, want to say shout out to Spain for winning Spain women's national team for winning. What am I saying? Shouts out to Spain for winning the winning their first women's World Cup. Of course, this is the World Cup that the United States were trying to three-peat, didn't ultimately do it. Spain won their first women's World Cup, and I think that this one was so fascinating because we talk about talent gap, and I said when we talked about the FIBA basketball, I said that gone are the days where you can go out and put anybody on the court and Team USA wins. And we even saw that. Shouts out to Team USA for winning. They beat, was it Germany? But Germany was up 12 points in the second half. And Anthony Edwards went crazy, and they ultimately won. But like I said, gone are the days where you can just be the best team, or you can just roll the ball out and be the best team on the court just because you have Team USA on your shirt. Well, the same can be said for FIFA, at least the women's side. The women's side, yes, Team USA was probably the best team, but as we saw, I think the finals had two teams that's never been there. Or I'm not going to say never been there. That's never won. I don't think England women has ever won. And as we're seeing, man, you're seeing women, or Spain, England, Great Britain. You're seeing them. The talent gap is shrinking. And while, yes, you can still argue and you can still say that Team USA is the best, and you may not even be wrong, but what you can't say is the talent gap is seismic anymore. As we're seeing with the fact of the teams that had something to say about being in, the World Cup and ultimately winning the World Cup, i.e. Spain, their first time making it. So shouts out to Spain for winning the World Cup. Much, much deserved. And lastly, before we go, we have the unpopular topic of the week. Now, the unpopular topic of the week, or day. We have the unpopular topic of the day. Now, the unpopular topic of the day actually comes from a conversation that was sparked on the Gilbert Arenas podcast. Shouts out to Gilbert Arenas. Shouts out to, I think it's called Gil Arena podcast. He was having a conversation with Steph Curry, and and he asked Steph Curry straight up, "Are you the best point guard ever?" And Steph Curry said yes. The argument is between him and Magic Johnson, and to me, I completely agree. I completely agree that the conversation for greatest point guard of all time comes down to Steph Curry and Magic Johnson. And for the unpopular topic of the day, I wanted to give my opinion on the argument. I wanted to give who I think is the greatest point guard of all time. Now, there is no question, and I'm not going to sit here and say that Steph Curry is my favorite player to watch right now. And Steph Curry has been my favorite player to watch for a while now. And I do agree with the sentiment that he said that the greatest of all time conversation as far as the point guard position does go. It's a conversation between him and Magic Johnson. And I'm completely taking my bias out of it. I'm going to be as unbiased as possible when we have this conversation. When we talk about overall stats, career stats, Steph Curry averages 25 points a game. Magic Johnson averages 20. Magic Johnson averages 7 rebounds a game. Steph Curry, 5. Magic Johnson, 11 assists a game. Steph Curry, 7. Magic Johnson has 2 steals a game. Steph Curry has 2, but it's really 1.6, and Magic Johnson 1.9. They both Magic Johnson averaged 0.4 blocks a game. Steph Curry averaged 0.2. Johnson's shot as a career 52%. Steph Curry is pretty much 48. Steph Curry has a much better 3-point percentage at 43 compared to 30. Much better, well, not much better, but a better free throw percentage at 91, and Magic Johnson's at 85. Effective field goal, Steph Curry is 58, Magic Johnson is 53, or 0.53. Magic Johnson has 5 championships. Steph Curry has 4. Magic Johnson has 9 NBA first team. Steph Curry has 4. Magic Johnson has 10 All-NBA selections. Steph Curry has 9. Magic Johnson has 3 MVP. Steph Curry has 2. Magic Johnson has 3 Finals MVPs. Steph Curry has 1. And Magic Johnson has 12 All-Stars when Steph Curry has 9. Now, obviously, when you look at today's game, that skews a lot of the percentage, especially when we talk about 3-point percentage and scoring points per game, because Steph Curry shoots more. Steph Curry takes damn near 5 more field goal attempts a game. I think that there's no argument that Steph Curry is one of the most influential players in basketball history. When you can just see the effect that Steph Curry has on basketball when you go and watch kids play, when you watch AU, when you watch high school, college, and you just see hell, even in the NBA, you just see the sheer amount of 3-pointers are taken compared to when you compare when he first got into the league and where he is now. Steph Curry, to me, revolutionized the game in the sense of the importance and the willingness to take threes. And I think that, and Magic Johnson, to his credit, is a unicorn. When I say unicorn, we've never seen a player. In fact, I think we've only seen this twice in NBA history. A player, Magic Johnson's height, with the scoring ability, with the assist ability, with just the sheer flashiness that Magic Johnson brings. And I think that the only other person that you can compare Magic Johnson, or that can compare to Magic Johnson, is LeBron James. That's why when we talk about greatest of all time, when we talk about comparisons, I think a better comparison to LeBron James is, of course, LeBron and Magic Johnson. But to me, even taking my fandom out, it's hard for me to put Steph Curry above Magic Johnson. And I do think it's close, but when it's close like that, that's when you have to go to accolades. I think that if you're just talking about sheer skill, I think that it's pretty much dead even, because there's things that Magic Johnson does there's things that Magic Johnson does better than Steph Curry, and there's things that Steph Curry does way better than Magic Johnson. So when we talk about skills, I think that they're dead even. And when you're also talking about impact of the game, I think that Steph Curry wins that. But we also are talking about a person, Magic Johnson, that we've never seen, I don't think we ever will see a player like that. I think we thought Penny Hardaway was going to be that, but of course, when we talk about the height and the offensive ability, but injuries kind of stopped that one. So when it's that close, to me, you have to go with percentages. You have to go with accomplishments. And Steph Curry averages more points, 3-point percentage, field goal percentage, free throw percentage and effective field goal percentage, Magic Johnson is better than him at rebounding, assists, steals, blocks, field goal percentage. Has more championships, has more all NBA first team selections, all NBA selections, MVPs, final MVPs, all stars. Now, I think that is pretty much a lock that Steph Curry is going to be a Hall of Famer. So I think that, yeah, maybe with more time, maybe if he wins another championship, I don't know. But it's hard for me when we talk about the pantheon of point guards. It's hard for me to put someone like Steph Curry over someone like Magic Johnson right now. I think that maybe if Steph Curry wins another one, or maybe if he doesn't win another one, but we still see the greatness that we see from for a couple more years, maybe we can have or not maybe, but we possibly can have another conversation. But for right now, even though Steph Curry is my favorite player to watch, and even though that Steph Curry is arguably a top 10 player ever, I think that Magic Johnson is better than Steph Curry. And I think that Steph Curry is right now the second best point guard ever. Could be number one. If you disagree, let me know. But right now, I think that he's the second best. I think that he has the opportunity to be the first best. Maybe if we see maybe 2 or 3 more years of, the Steph Curry we saw last year, or maybe another ring. I don't know. But I think that's I'm picking Magic Johnson as the best point guard of all time right now. So there you have it, man. That has been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to YouTube. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Anything would help. I think I know that I'm less than 100 away, so anything would help. It definitely means a lot. And if you aren't on YouTube, subscribe to wherever you're listening. It definitely means a lot that you listen as well. Follow the socials, follow Instagram, follow TikTok. I post pretty much daily there. I interact with people as well. So don't forget to follow the socials. If you want to communicate with me, that's probably the best way. And yeah, man, that has been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I will see you guys on Saturday. And until next time, much love.